Alright, I'm out here at the Rose Hill Cemetery in Berrien Springs, Michigan, and I wanted to get another video shot from some of our early commanders. I missed out on a few of them last time, so I'm down here in probably the most beautiful part of the cemetery. It's the part way down here by Lake Chapin, and it's a little hill that goes down, and there's a lot of people buried here who I know. So I'm going to flip the camera around because right here in, sorry about that, flipping the camera around, and here is Harold J. Wagner. And Harold J. Wagner was a Legionnaire. He was actually commander in 1952 and in 1961. His wife was a shear. And he was a staff sergeant in World War II. He was also founding chairman for the Sons of the Legionnaire Squadron 85. So that's pretty cool. He also served as clerk on the village council, and he was a trustee for 16 years. So he definitely was very civic minded. And I'm not sure how he was related to Arthur D. Wagner. I'm going to do a little bit more research on that. Arthur D. Wagner was killed in World War II and is also a namesake for our Post 85. E.J. Stover A.D. Wagner is our complete official name, and E.J. Stover died in World War I. A.D. Wagner died in World War II. So Harold Wagner survived the war and lived a long, very productive, very busy life, it seems. So there he is. Thank you for your service, Harold. And I'll be on to my next one. Here's another of our early commanders. This was actually Dan Ira Porter's son, Royal C. Porter. And Royal C. Porter was commander of our Legion in 1951. And he was a sergeant in World War II. He was also a member of the fire department. And the C stands for Charles. I didn't know that until about an hour ago when I looked him up. Never knew that. Royal C. Porter. That was actually, he was Marion's dad. And she used to talk about him a lot. Marion Kilgore, who was a very big part of our Legion. And right above here, you can see Daniel Leslie Porter. And that was his brother, Dan Leslie Porter, or Les. And he was also commander of the Legion in 1958 and 1959. Also a sergeant in the Army, World War I. He was a communication sergeant in the 28th Tank Battalion. Sounds pretty impressive there. And later on he had a barbershop in Berrien Springs. I think Tom Smith told me that it was where the laundromat now is, the Pit Stop Laundromat, behind the alley that runs behind Topper's Bar. So I've done my laundry there, so that was his barbershop at one time. So he and Royal were Dan Porter's sons. And if I can step back here, and Dan L. has a military marker as well. I don't know if I'm going to upload these videos in the order that I videotape them, but if you look right over there, that's where I just came from, and I got Harold Wagner's grave on video as well. So they're literally steps away from each other. And if you, this is a big cemetery and you can't even see it, but if you go all the way up that hill and about 2/3 of the way through the cemetery, that's where their father, Dan I. Porter, is buried. I guess I should have stepped just a couple feet ahead because there is Royal C. Porter's grave. And their other son, Bob Porter, just died well, 2 years ago now. He was a neighbor of mine, real nice guy. And there's Marion. Hi, Marion. Sure do miss you. Marion was a long time auxiliary member and officer. Just a second, she held about every office there was. So when I do a auxiliary version of these videos, I will definitely include Berrien. She was a big part of that place. And here's her uncle Bob Porter, another veteran. I'm not sure that Bob was ever commander. I'll have to get back to you on that. But anyway, so this is the Porter section of Rose Hill Cemetery. They have a real nice view down here with Lake Chapin right behind them. And that's a nice stone there. Okay, now Evelyn Vandenberg was a Porter. She was Dan I.'s daughter, and she married a guy by the name of Richard Vandenberg, or as I knew him, I just knew him as Dick, and I remember him. He died the year before I started working at the Legion. Our records are incomplete right now as to whether he was a commander. He's a possible commander because he was a vice commander in 53, and we don't have anybody listed in 54. So that he might have been commander in 54. But if you know for sure, please let us know. Please let me know, because we're trying to fill in the gaps, and the records haven't been kept very efficiently down there. It's just a matter of doing a bunch of research between my efforts and Lisa Bromolo's efforts. So we're trying to fill in the gaps. But Evelyn here is buried right next to her brothers, and that would be her niece and nephew right there. And it's a small world because I didn't even realize that Evelyn Vandenberg, and I kind of remember her, but she was married to Dick Vandenberg, and I definitely remember him. He was a big tall guy. He was hard to miss. And he was aviation cadet, U.S. Army Air Corps, World War II. So Richard H. Vandenberg. Okay, and then there was a younger Vandenberg. Okay, that's interesting. I don't know Richard D. I don't believe. Vietnam. So I haven't had to walk very far in the cemetery yet because all the graves I found are within like a big circle, not too far away from each other. So hopefully I'll keep finding ones that I'm looking for. So I'm supposed to be doing early Legion commanders, and I'm really trying to do, having kind of a method to my madness here, but I just walked this way, and Glenn Shoup was commander in the 80s, 82 and 86, I believe. So it feels wrong to not give him a little shout out while I'm walking by. Glenn loved to boat. He also was a teacher. He built things. His middle name was Homer. I remember that because Don Kilgore used to, when he came into the Legion, he'd say, "Hi, Glenn, Homer," which, always made me think of The Simpsons, but of course he was Homer before Homer Simpson was. So Glenn has been gone for a few years now, but we really do miss him. He's a great guy. Loved animals. And he's in the best part of the cemetery, right down here by Lake Chapin. This is the best part of the cemetery. If you had to be in the cemetery, I mean, nobody wants to be in a cemetery, of course, but if you had to be, this is where you want to be, in this nice section here. It's so shaded. Alright, on to the next. Alright, here we go. So, last video, which was a week ago when I filmed it, I was way over there by the building and past all those trees, and I was looking, and I could not find the King brothers because I was way off. I found them. They're right there is where they put people's ashes. What do they call that? Whatever, Berrien or whatever. This is where the Kings are, right on the last row. You can see the Lake Chapin behind us there. So, Allison King, I was looking for, and his brother is right behind him. I'll start with Allison. They called him Bill King, right? He went by Bill. Allison J. King. So why they called him Bill, I don't know. But anyway. He was the brother of James King, right behind him. Now, he was commander of the Legion, Post 85, from 1943 to 1945. And he had other roles as well. He was on the town council. And in my research of the Legion, I actually come across his name quite a bit. So I think he held other offices and whatnot. My research on him for this video said he retired from Whirlpool, where he worked as a guard. So that's pretty cool. Nice to finally see him. Now, I don't... Oh, man. He doesn't have a flag. Maybe he doesn't have a marker. Well, I'll have to ask Jean Stroud about that, because she was going to show me where his grave was, and I don't see a marker. So we have to remedy that. Now, his brother, James E. King, I got my shadow in here. James E. King, sorry, it's real sunny right now. It's a beautiful day. First thing you notice from his stone is he was very young when he died. He was only 31 years old. And maybe not even 31. Had he turned 31 yet? No, he was only 30 actually. I hadn't even had his birthday yet. And I'll come back to that. But he was commander in 1924. That was before the Legion even had the hall built. So that was early. And they called him Pinky. His nickname was Pinky. Don't ask me why. I suspect it might have had something to do with his other, what he was known for, other than being Legion Commander, was that he was a star baseball player. And he played for the Berrien Springs High School, and he later played with several semi-pro teams, including the House of David. So that's pretty neat. I think they said he was an outfielder, and he was really fast. But anyway, he married Louise E. King, and her maiden name was Schrader. Now, her father was John C. Schrader, and he's the one who started Schrader's Supermarkets. So that's pretty cool, because, we still call Harding Schrader's, but John C. Schrader was the origin of Schrader's Supermarket. Or it was probably just Schrader's Market back then. Nothing really super about it. Supermarkets weren't super yet. So, James Pinky, I'll just call him Pinky. Now, he died while he was fighting a fire at M.H. Myers Coal Yard. And as far as I've been able to make out, that's somewhere along where Tudor Road kicks off, where the factory is now, you know, Premier and Clark, where that used to be. Somewhere around there was a big coal yard, and it burned down in 1932. And he was fighting that fire, and he died from injuries sustained in that fire. A 20-foot iron beam fell on him, and he died 20 hours later. So he was only 30 years old, and he was helping the fire department. He wasn't part of the fire department, but he was helping the fire department put out the blaze, and that's how he gave his life, and that's why he's here right now. So, Pinky, I'm glad to have found you, and your brother Allison, and your wife, and her dad too, you know, I mean, all in the family here. But the Kings were a big part of the Legion. Here's another former commander, Art Robinson. 1934, he was Legion commander. And, you know, I remember Bill Robinson. He actually worked at Schrader's. I just talked about Schrader's over there in Pinky's grave. Bill lived right down the street from the Legion. And actually, that might have been Art's house, now that I think about it. And Shirley just passed away. That was Bill's wife. Her maiden name was Blount. And I ended up with a bunch of her yearbooks, a bunch of both their yearbooks. So it really is very helpful. And I actually got a bunch of their postcards too. That's a story for another day, but really cool old real picture postcards. But Art Robinson, I know I'll be able to inlay a picture, you know, when I do this video, so I'll do that. He and Grace were married a long time. I remember they got in the paper for having an anniversary, like 50 years or something. I don't know exactly, but anyway, I do remember that. I didn't intend to have him on this video, so I haven't done a whole lot of research on Art Robinson, but maybe I'll come back to him when I've done more research. But I do know that he was commander in 34, and he is just so, like a couple rows up from the Kings over there towards the lake. So I did want to mention him as I was walking by and pay my respects to Bill and Shirley as well, because I ended up with one of their bottles, actually. They had an auction out at their place, and I ended up with one of the bottles, which kind of got me a little bit started on bottle collecting. So there was the postcards, there was the yearbooks, there was the bottles, and that's all, like, got me really interested even more in local history. So I feel kind of indebted to the Robinsons. I know Bill's kids also gave some stuff down to the Legion, and it's in our display cabinet. We don't have much of a display area down at the Legion, unfortunately, but I try to put out what people give me, and they did give kind of like some, I think they're like big bullets, and a framed picture, which is pretty cool, and I think a book or two. But anyway, I have that all on display down at the club. So stop in and see it. I'll show it to you. So Art Robinson was born in 1896, and he died in 1986 at the age of 89. He was a veteran of World War I, a charter member of Post 85, and he was a private in the U.S. Army. He also worked as water superintendent for the village of Berrien Springs, and he retired in the 60s. He also worked at Sparks Lumber Yard. Now, an interesting thing I learned about him is he and his wife Grace were once proprietors of the Green Lantern, which is where Town Hall Pizza now stands. It used to be Roma's Pizza. Anyway, the Green Lantern was a long-lasting cafe diner, and they had several proprietors, but Art and his wife, Grace, were just a couple of them. So here's another early one. Pearly Porter, 1931, World War I. He died in 1971, which was the same year that Dan I. Porter died. And I believe that was another brother of Dan I. So Frank was his son. I'm not sure if he was ever commander, but Pearly O. Porter was. Wife Ruth. There's another big, this is interesting because this is another big section of this cemetery that's full of porters. Basically the next 3 lines, and if you look ahead, straight ahead, there's a Pearl Porter. He doesn't have a marker, so he wasn't a veteran. But here's the one I started with, Dan I. Porter, just right behind Pearly. And here's, Frank Porter. Yep, okay. Frank Porter's got his on the back of his stone. So that was most likely Pearly's son. 1923 he was born, so that would have been World War II, Sergeant, U.S. Army. Apologies for not having all the relationships, memorized. There's a lot of porters, and it's hard to keep them straight because they use the same names over too. So, but I just came from, right there was Arthur Robinson's, and I think straight ahead there you can, oh man, can't see it, but it's right there at the King's. So this is all kind of the center of the cemetery. Oh, it's right behind the new monument, which, let's go take a look at that. Because the American Legion Auxiliary started this fundraiser. It's called the Paver Project. And you can actually buy one of these pavers and have it engraved with a loved one's name in front of our monument there. 1998 is when they dedicated that. That's from the Sons of the Legion. And we can just go through and look at some of the names. Oliver Dilly, that was Cortland's son. Joe Ewalt, he was a commander of the Legion. I have to find his grave still. He's somewhere around here. Several in here. I know so many of these. And the cost of this is $70 if anybody wants to get. It's a great tribute to a loved one. And, it's there forever. Right there in Rose Hill Cemetery. So, that's where they have the services every Memorial Day. And there's plenty more. They try to get people close by, their other relatives, if possible. But we have forms to fill out at the Legion if anybody's interested in getting one of these pavers engraved.